Briar Creek woke slowly, like a town allergic to alarm clocks. Streetlights blinked out one by one, leaving a pale film of dawn on the asphalt. At 5:43 a.m., a tall, thin black man with a sun-bleached ball cap slid a key into the side door of Whitfield and Sons Auto and let himself in. His name, at least the one folks used, was Ezekiel Zeke Lawson. He hit two rows of fluorescent tubes. Winter-cool light spilled across concrete pocked with dark rosettes of old oil. Zeke hung a canvas jacket on a hook, filled a plastic pitcher at the sink, and nudged a mop bucket forward. His motions were neither fast nor lazy. They were exact, like a ritual someone had rehearsed for years. Squeegee skimming, rags folded into squares, wrenches on the shadow-lined pegboard shining again by 6:07. Clean enough that no one would notice. Quiet enough that no one would care. At 6:28, Nora Whitfield came in through the front. Third-generation owner, gray-green eyes, hair pulled back, composure set to calm. She carried a dented stainless thermos and a habit as reliable as sunrise. "Morning, Zeke." "Morning, Ms. Nora." That was all. In Briar Creek, people believed in long roads, sticky August heat, and greetings that never changed. By 7, the shop shook off its sleep. The air compressor woke with a soft feed. The corner radio murmured low country tunes. Jenna Brooks, youngest tech, braids tucked, fingernails clean only on Sundays, came first, yawning around a crescent of croissant. She offered Zeke a bite. He smiled and kept dusting the glass on the office door. Miguel Alvarez followed, pushing a jack into its groove. At 7:30, Darren Pike stalked in like he owned pressure itself. Lean, sun-scorched, chin slightly lifted as though the ceiling might be too close for his taste. "Anything fun on the board?" He tossed at Nora without looking up. "Or just another Camry with crying rotors?" "Read the board," Nora said. Flat but final. Darren didn't so much as glance toward Zeke. To him, Zeke was part of the building, present unless broken. Jenna, though, had noticed the way Zeke ordered bolts by length and thread, as if measuring with his eyes. It was the kind of precision you picked up somewhere that wasn't a broom closet. At 8:46 a.m., Briar Creek trembled, barely. Not wind. A sound. Not the swaggering bark of an old V8, and not the diesel clack of a farm truck. It was silk, a purr that wore silence like a tux. A Rolls-Royce Ghost, blue-silver and impossibly clean, rolled into the lot like a wave smoothing itself. Heads turned in unison. Only Zeke paused with an air hose coiled in his hands, tilting his head. Buried in that purity was a stray beat, a faint tick, less than a quarter rhythm off on the left bank. Too subtle for anyone who'd left the radio on. Zeke had switched it off at 6:02. The door opened. Victor Lang stepped out. White shirt, navy blazer, shoes polished like patience. He didn't speak loud. He didn't need to. "Thanks for taking me on short notice," he told Nora, a contained nod. "It's been to 3 shops in 2 weeks. Computers say it's fine. It's not. 10 to 12 minutes in, there's a rhythmic tick and a whisper of lost power. You have to feel it to know it." Darren rapped his knuckles lightly on the fender, as if accepting a duel. "Give me 30. Jenna already had the diagnostic cart rolling. Miguel eased a lift to the bay. Nora stepped back and let the room get to work. Zeke stood at the yellow floor line with the mop handle balanced loosely in one hand, listening the way a violin maker listens to trees. 2 hours of testing produced a symphony of nothing. Diagnostics, clean. Compression, perfect. Mixture, exact. Spark, consistent. The tick remained a rumor that showed up exactly when superstition says it would, just before anyone decided they had imagined it. By 3 p.m., Victor called to check in. Nora kept her voice even. "We're making progress." She hung up and eyed Darren. His jaw tightened. "Could be a micro delay in the cam phaser," he muttered. "If so, it should throw a code." Jenna suggested logging higher-order harmonics on the belt generator path. Miguel asked about an oversensitive knock sensor. Darren waved both off. "No blind darts." At 4:52, Victor stepped back into the shop earlier than expected, hands in his jacket pockets, gaze cool as a leveled bubble. "How close?" Darren scrubbed his forehead with his sleeve. "We've eliminated the big systems. Leave it overnight. I'll tear down deeper." Victor's face remained a note you couldn't read. Savannah said the same thing. The sentence landed like a nail dropped on concrete. Nora set her thermos down, breath ready to soften the moment. Darren snapped first. He flung a rag onto the steel bench. It slapped the surface like a challenge. Nobody in this town is faster than me. He swept his eyes across the room, then jerked his chin toward the back. Anybody got a better idea? Step up. Even the janitor. No laughter. Jenna's mouth thinned. Miguel stared at his boots. Zeke still stood where he stood, gaze steady as a plumb line. Darren yanked his wallet, peeled 10 crisp hundreds, and slammed them onto the bench. 1,000 in cash. No one in Briar Creek figures this out before morning. Prove me wrong. The canvas sign on the wall fluttered as a breeze threaded the rafters. Nora opened her mouth. Before the words formed, Zeke turned, unhurried but irreversible. He walked to the bench, not to the money, to the space beside it, and looked at Nora, then at Victor. "Let me try," he said. The voice was low, even, a sharp blade sliding a plastic seal. Darren scoffed. "What, you gonna mop it till it stops ticking?" Nora angled her head. "Zeke, you don't have to." "I want to." His eyes never left the hood. "If the owner allows it, I'll need the shop to myself. I'll lock up when I'm done." Victor paused for a single beat, long enough for Jenna to hear a small screw kiss a tray. Then he nodded. "You have the floor. At this point, I need a different pair of ears." "Be my guest," Darren said, hands up, the smirk not quite covering the strain. Nora ducked into the office and came back with a spare key, the head scuffed white. "Don't lose it. I'm in at 6:30. Zeke accepted it with both hands the way a surgeon accepts a scalpel. People drifted out into the amber hour. Victor lingered one breath longer, studying Zeke with the puzzled recognition you feel when an old photograph finally tells you what it is. He left too. At 6:17 p.m., the shop belonged to Zeke. He dimmed the lights until cool bands pooled over the engine bay. He stripped off gloves, unzipped his coverall to the waist. Underneath a plaid shirt, frayed at the cuffs, spotless everywhere else. His hands came bare. Not the blisters of a broom, but the specific calluses of a machinist. Inner thumb, index ridge, mid-knuckle pinky. He laid a leather notebook on the workbench. The spine shone smooth as riverstone. Pages were taped with yellowed corners and hand-inked diagrams. No school crest, no company watermark. Just a language learned in rooms where clocks had no meaning. Battery off, residual current bled. Zeke unskinned layer after layer until the phaser housing lay exposed. Every piece he removed landed on cloth, fasteners arrayed by length as precisely as ranks. No clatter. No wasted reach. At 8:03, the pen light drew a small moon on aluminum. There it was, a hairline fracture in the cam phaser housing. Too fine to leak cold, just wide enough to deform under heat and nudge oil pressure out of truth. No scanner would catch it. Most ears wouldn't either. Zeke clicked off the light and let a quiet smile crease one corner of his mouth. Not triumph, recognition. He scanned the materials rack and found a leftover length of titanium alloy. He set the lathe, checked the micrometer twice, then once again because that's who he was. The cutter sang a steady zzz, curls of swarf spilling like gray ribbon. With the radio off, the sound was church. The lathe an organ, the machinist the cantor, the hymn an old one. At 2:31 a.m., the replacement lay on a lint-free cloth, edges chamfered, tolerance right to the whisper. He rebuilt the stack in reverse, torqued to spec from muscle memory, wiped surfaces like he'd never touched them. At 3:58, the hood came down. The shop breathed. Zeke slid behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine settled into something you feel in your ribs before your ears understand. The rhythm of correct. No stray tick. Bass steady, treble smooth, the whole note exactly where it belonged. Zeke closed his eyes for a single count. Old habits. He shut it down. No celebration. There was work left. The kind he's paid for. Tools home. Benches clean. Trash out. 2 long passes with the mop, corners squared. By 6:08, the place looked like nothing extraordinary had happened, which of course it had. At 6:30, the front lock chirped. Nora stepped in with her thermos, expecting the hush of an empty shop. and the sight of Zeke at the far bay pushing a mop. Instead, she heard a V12 exhale like a held note. She stopped. "It runs?" she asked, voice lowered as if sound itself could smudge the finish. Zeke nodded. "Smooth as it ever did." He pointed to the bench, the cracked phaser housing beside the fresh-cut part. "Thermal hairline. Too small to flag. Big enough to throw time. I replaced it." Nora looked at Zeke in a way she had never looked in all his years here. Not at a janitor who'd done extra, but at a master who'd brought a proud machine back to itself. Zeke didn't add a word. He hung the cloth on its hook, rolled the mop back to the closet, and left behind a perfectly humming Rolls-Royce and a secret that was almost done being a secret. The sun hadn't fully cleared the pines when Nora set her thermos down and listened again. Really listened to the ghost. No phantom tick. No rattle tucked under the RPMs. Just a deep, expensive hush that told you the machine was pleased with itself. Zeke stood nearby with clean hands and his coverall tied at the waist. He wasn't smiling. He looked relieved, the way a translator looks when two people finally understand each other. The bell over the front door chimed. Jenna came in mid-yawn, froze, and blinked twice. "No way," she whispered. She drifted toward the bay as if any sudden move might scare the sound away. "You fixed it?" Zeke gave the smallest nod. "It's right now." Miguel arrived next, rolling a cart that squeaked like a guilty confession. He heard it before he saw it. "That's cleaner than yesterday," he said, brows up. He peered into the bay, then spotted the cracked phaser housing on the bench. "Where'd you—" "Hairline under heat," Zeke said, gentle. "Made a new shell." Everything else was telling the truth. The housing wasn't. They were still absorbing that when the door banged and Darren strode in, 10 minutes late and loaded for a comeback. Traffic was... He stopped. The sound pinned him where he stood. He stepped closer, eyes narrow, a mechanic's superstition warring with pride. He looked at the bench, at the felt-lined cloth, at the machine part with edges so tidy it made his palms itch. Nora didn't bother with ceremony. She tipped her chin toward the stack of cash still sitting where he'd left it. "The bet." Darren's jaw flexed. For a full 2 seconds, he looked like a man searching for an exit he could live with. Then he blew a breath through his nose, peeled off his cap, and walked to the bench. He tapped the money once with his fingers, almost a salute, and pushed it toward Zeke without meeting his eyes. Zeke didn't touch it. "Buy the shop a new set of micrometers," he said. "The good kind. If you've got change left, get Jenna a vibration probe that logs at high sample rates." Jenna blinked. "For real?" Zeke shrugged as if saying useful things belong where they'll be used. Darren's stare flicked up, hard. There was offense in it, sure, but also the first dusting of respect. Men like Darren respected reality even when it embarrassed them. Especially then. The bell chimed again. Victor Lang stepped in, posture composed but eyes a few degrees brighter than yesterday. He didn't head for Nora or the counter. He went straight to the bay and stood listening, the way one listens to a child say a word correctly at last. "Well?" he asked, voice low. Nora answered for the room. "Fixed. No loss of power. No tick. Warm. Cold. Steady." Victor's gaze slid to Zeke. He studied the man the way you study an answer key you haven't seen in years. "May I?" he asked, hand hovering near the door handle. Zeke popped the lid, passed the keys. Victor sat, breathed in leather and rightness, and turned the engine over. The purr rolled out, silk over glass. He closed his eyes, smiled without teeth, and shut it down. When he stepped out, the smile was gone. In its place was recognition. "It's you," he said softly. Silence hit the floor and spread. Jenna's eyebrows jumped. Miguel glanced at Nora. Darren folded his arms like a referee waiting on a replay. Victor didn't look away from Zeke. "I saw a paper 15 years ago, unsigned officially, but traced back to a ghost author out of Shreveport. Meridian variable timing, an approach to phase control that solved oil aeration at high heat by redesigning the housing rather than chasing sensors." He motioned toward the phaser shell on the cloth. "I never forgot that drawing. People said the man who wrote it just disappeared." Zeke's eyes darkened as if a curtain drew across a window. "People say a lot of things." "You're Ezekiel Lawson," Victor said quieter. "The engineer. You consulted at Anders Mechanical until someone misfiled your credits. I remember the story, mostly because no one would print it. Jenna's voice came out small and sincere. Mr. Lawson, is that true? Zeke looked at Nora first. Years of quiet had taught him to ask permission with his eyes. Nora's expression softened. Your call. He set the rag down and faced the room. I built things, he said, for a long time. One of those things made other people money. When the names got attached, mine wasn't invited. Darren let a skeptical sound leak, but it died in his throat when Victor didn't flinch. Do you remember Cole Anders? Victor asked. And the nephew who suddenly became a wunderkind? The nephew who couldn't read a cam map without a picture? Zeke's mouth twitched, humor without warmth. I remember a conference room where my drawings were on the table and my seat wasn't. Nora's hands pressed flat on the workbench. You worked here 7 years, she said steady. Opened my doors, kept my people safe. I don't care what name was on a magazine. I care who shows up. But if you want that other name put back where it belongs, I'll help. Zeke nodded once, gratitude in the angle more than the eyes. Thank you. Victor cleared his throat, business instincts returning to the surface. Mr. Lawson, Zeke, my firm could use your mind. Consultancy at minimum, leadership if you want it. Hybrid, remote, come when you like. More importantly, authorship is yours. Drafts, patents, credit. I won't ask for an answer today, but I'm asking. Darren bristled. You gonna poach our... He stopped himself. The word janitor hovered in the air and dissolved. Our guy? Victor didn't bristle back. I'm going to offer a door he should never have had closed. The room held its breath. Zeke didn't reach for it. He looked at Jenna, then Miguel, then at the lathe he'd cleaned 1,000 times. I'd like breakfast, he said at last, the line so ordinary it made everyone smile without knowing why. Victor's relief was polite but real. There's a diner 2 blocks over. Best omelets in a 50-mile radius. Nora handed Zeke the key to the front door. Go. We can run the morning. As they left, Darren grunted toward the bench. You forgot your 1,000. Zeke never broke stride. Put it toward the micrometers. The diner was bright in the way only places with cheap coffee and honest eggs know how to be. Vinyl booths, a pie display that turned slowly like a lesson in patience, and waitresses who refilled without asking. Zeke took a seat facing the door. Old habit, Victor sat opposite, slipped the keys onto the formica between them, like proof something sacred had passed hands. I meant what I said, Victor began, about credit, about space. Zeke wrapped his fingers around the coffee mug and let the heat climb his palms. I know. You don't seem surprised, Victor said. Zeke's smile was small. Surprise is for people who expect anything. A waitress poured. Victor ordered an omelet he might not taste. Zeke asked for toast he probably wouldn't eat. Sun sifted through dust and blinds, laying zebra stripes across a man who had rebuilt a machine and avoided rebuilding himself for a very long time. What happened? Victor asked, not demanding, simply offering a place for the story to sit. Zeke watched the pie carousel spin 1/4 turn. A long time ago, I wrote a thing. Someone else signed it. I complained, and suddenly the problem wasn't theft, it was my attitude. Contracts got waived. Lawyers got hungry, my savings disappeared. So did a few friends. Then the calls slowed, then stopped. It's funny how fast you can go from asset to risk once you stop nodding on beat. Not funny, Victor said. Predictable. I was loud about fairness, Zeke continued. Loud and black, and not related to anyone who golfs. That's 3 strikes where I was playing. He didn't spit the words, he set them down gently, like something fragile that could still cut. Victor took the hit in silence. You deserve your name back. Zeke shrugged. My name's still mine. It was just quiet for a while. He looked up. I came to Briar Creek because a truck I'd coaxed past its warranty died 12 miles out. Nora gave me a broom and a door code. I took both. After a while, no one asked what I used to be, so I stopped asking myself. The food arrived and parked between them like a polite suggestion. Neither moved their forks. You're not asking for pity, Victor said. I'm asking for clarity, Zeke replied. What I do next has to add, not just fix. He turned the keys over with his fingertips, metal ticking softly on laminate. I liked last night, not because of the car, because making something right still felt right inside my head. I'd forgotten. Victor studied him, then pivoted to something practical. Start how you want. A retainer that pays you to say no, if you like. You mentor when you feel like it. You put your name where it belongs or nowhere at all. My only ask is simple. Don't disappear again. There are younger minds who need to see you visible. Zeke's gaze drifted to the window. A school bus rumbled past and he thought of a boy whose name he hadn't spoken out loud in years. An ache moved through his chest. Old, familiar, not entirely painful anymore. He pulled his wallet, worked a thin, worn photo out from behind the license. A kid of about 12, gap-toothed, holding a model engine with both hands like a trophy. My son, he said. The word felt both heavy and light. Aaron, or that's who he was then. We haven't spoken in a long time. Victor nodded, no questions, only the understanding of a man who'd learned not to press on bruises. Zeke slid the photo back. If I walk through your door, I'm bringing Briar Creek with me. The shop needs tools. The kids around here need a place to get their hands greasy before college makes them think their hands aren't worth anything. I don't want to trade one silence for another. Then don't, Victor said simply. Write the terms you can live with. They sat with it, the omelet cooling, the coffee warming, the day opening. At length, Zeke pushed his mug away and stood. I'm not saying yes, he said. Victor stood too. I didn't hear a no. Zeke's mouth almost smiled. Good. Then we're listening, right? They shook hands, no squeeze contest, no performance. Just two men agreeing that a door had hinges again. Outside, Briar Creek looked the same to anyone not watching. But back at Whitfield and Sons, a set of micrometers would soon arrive. And on Saturdays, the bay door might be open for kids, with questions bigger than their towns. And somewhere between a Rolls-Royce's corrected rhythm and a leather notebook with yellowed tape, a life that had once been misfiled found its proper drawer again. By noon, the ghost had left Briar Creek with its dignity restored and a promise from Victor to send paperwork that would not be a trap. The shop settled back into its rhythm, but every familiar sound felt newly tuned. The compressor hissed with confidence, sockets clicked like metronomes, and even the squeak in Miguel's tool cart seemed less apologetic. Nora updated the whiteboard, 2 brake jobs and 1 transmission flush, then added a new line in blue marker, order micrometers and a high sample vibration probe. Jenna to list the specifications. On it, Jenna said, cheeks still pink from the morning. She typed with the focus of someone ordering treasure. Darren worked in near silence. Every so often, his eyes drifted to the leather notebook Zeke had left on a shelf, as if a book could glare back. He was not mean, not exactly. Only a man who had believed he was the ceiling and had just discovered there was sky above it. Zeke moved through the bays as he always had, but his presence carried weight now. Nobody edged past him like furniture. People made space for him the way you do for a lead, without ceremony and with respect. Around 2, a local reporter pushed through the door, hair rising in the humidity, notebook ready. I heard a Rolls came and a miracle went, she chirped. Nora met her with a look that said, we fix cars, not headlines. The smile faltered. Zeke lifted a hand. Ma'am, he said, kind and firm, today is just a Tuesday. If you want a story, come back on Saturday. We are opening the bay for kids. Bring a camera then. There is a program? The reporter asked. There will be, Nora answered, already sketching the flyer in her head. By late afternoon, Jenna had a cart full of boxes and a smile like the first day of summer. The micrometers gleamed. The vibration probe felt satisfyingly overbuilt. Open one, Zeke said. She did. He showed her how to zero the tool, how to turn the thimble without bruising the numbers, how to feel the instant when metal stops being close and becomes true. Miguel hovered, eyes wide. Darren watched from a distance, then finally approached with his jaw set. Teach me the trick on the phaser housing, he said, each word tasting like gravel. If I missed a hairline once, I do not want to miss it twice. Zeke looked up. There was no victory in his expression, only invitation. You did not miss it, he said. You chased the loud suspects, The fracture was not loud. It was impolite. He slid a stool over. Sit. We will talk about oil aeration and what heat does when it creeps where it should not. They stood shoulder to shoulder over a sacrificial housing that Jenna had rescued from the scrap bin. Zeke traced stress paths with a black marker. Darren followed, nodding, asking spare questions, the kind that come from a mind that hates being wrong and loves being better. Jenna snapped a photo of the sketch, arrows and numbers and notes written clearly enough to teach and messy enough to prove a human hand. She posted it on the shop's dusty page with 3 words: Learning Saturdays, 2 p.m. By evening, the post had grown legs. A teacher shared it. A church group shared it. A retired Army mechanic wrote, "I will bring donuts and questions." At home, Zeke set the leather notebook on his kitchen table, the way one sets down news that could go either way. The apartment was clean in the rigorous small space style. Tidy shelves, a window plant that refused to die, a radio older than the town's gossip. He brewed coffee he did not need, sat and opened to a page he had avoided for years, a sketch labeled Meridian Variable Timing Housing, Revision B. In the margin sat a name that once appeared in other people's mouths, E. Lawson. The landline rang. He let it ring twice, hand hovering. On the 3rd ring, he picked up. "Hello?" A pause followed, shaped like doubt trying to be brave. Then a voice. "Dad?" The word struck him cleaner than any Torca number. For a moment, air would not come. "Aaron," he said softly, as if a bird had landed on his hand, and he did not want to scare it. "Yeah," a breathy laugh. "I was not sure this was still your number. I saw a post, a photo. Someone wrote about a janitor who fixed a rolls with a lathe at midnight. I zoomed in on the corner of a notebook. Your handwriting is exactly the same." Janitor, Zeke closed his eyes. He could see the boy with the model engine and the gap-toothed grin. He could hear a door slam in a house where the hinges were already tired. "How are you?" Zeke asked. Too small a question, and exactly the right one. "I have been worse," Aaron said. "Better now. Married. 1 kid, Caleb. You would like him. He takes apart remote controls to improve them. Samantha calls him an optimist with pliers." Zeke laughed, a sound that had forgotten its shape and found it again. "That tracks." "I was angry," Aaron said, as plain as a lug nut. "I thought you chose machines over us, that you loved a diagram more than dinner." Then I read, I asked around. People do not tell the truth quickly, but sometimes they do tell it. I think I did not understand the kind of fight you were in, or the price of fighting alone. Silence settled, the good kind, where 2 people count the same seconds. "Son," Zeke said, steady now, "if you need an apology, I have a drawer full. I should have found a way to hold the work without dropping you. That part is on me." "I needed that a long time ago," Aaron admitted. "Now I need something else." "What is it?" "To know what you are going to do next," Aaron said. "Not because I want to weigh in, because when Caleb asked me what courage looks like, I want to point to you without a footnote." The coffee cooled. The room warmed. Zeke looked at the notebook. He thought of Victor's handshake, Nora's trust, Darren's grudging humility, Jenna's bright focus, Miguel's careful questions. He thought of a Saturday bay door rolled wide. "I am going to build," he said. "Not only engines, a place. For kids who have not yet been told they are allowed to think with their hands. For the stubborn ones who learn by hearing the difference between right and almost. I will help a firm or 2 if I can write the rules. But Briar Creek owns my Saturdays." Aaron exhaled, the sound of a set-down weight. "I want to bring Caleb next month. If that is all right." "It is perfect," Zeke said. His throat tightened. "Bring Samantha, too. I make terrible lemonade and excellent mistakes. We can fix both." They talked a while longer, not catching up exactly, more like laying tracks slowly and carefully, rail by rail. When they hung up, the apartment felt bigger without changing size. Zeke picked up a pen and wrote a new page. Learning from the floor up, Session 1, engines breathe. Bulleted lines found their own order. Smell tells. Sound maps. Hands read metal. Dignity equals torque without strain. Saturday arrived with sunlight as clean as a fresh bearing. The bay door rolled up and the town rolled in. High schoolers with shy shoulders. A veteran with strong forearms and guarded eyes. A girl in a denim jacket who announced, "I hate math unless it smells like gas." Jenna set out donuts and safety glasses. Miguel arranged chairs. Nora handed out waivers nobody read. Zeke stood where the floor paint had faded to a soft gray and looked at them the way you look at an engine you already respect. He did not give a speech. He gave a demonstration, a beat-up alternator, a stethoscope, a translation. "Engines talk," he said. "Most folks tell them to shut up. We will listen instead." He showed them how to coil a hose so it does not bite ankles, how to hear detonation before the sensor tattles, how to turn a micrometer and know exactly when you have crossed the line between wish and reality. He placed tools in hands the way teachers place books, not as gifts, as responsibilities. Halfway through, Darren slipped in, stood against the back wall, and watched. Jenna noticed and tried not to smile too obviously. When Zeke asked for a volunteer to read a waveform, Darren stepped forward without being asked, handed the probe to a kid with bitten nails and said quietly, "You do it. I will hold the ground clip." "Oh," the veteran asked the question no one else dared. "What do you do when someone takes your work?" His voice did not shake. It trembled. Zeke rested a palm on the bench. "You remember the parts they cannot steal," he said. "What you know, what you can teach, where you belong. If you can get your name back clean, get it. If you cannot, make sure a dozen other names get theirs because you were here." The veteran nodded once, eyes wet and grateful. As class ended, a thin man in a very fine suit wandered in, wearing a smile that assumed permission. He handed Nora a card embossed in silver. Anders Mechanical, General Counsel. The air cooled a few degrees. "We are delighted Mr. Lawson is rediscovering his passions," he said. "We would love to discuss legacy intellectual property boundaries, purely as a courtesy." Nora's expression went winter. "If you are here with courtesy, email it. If you are here with a threat, leave it outside where we keep the used oil." The smile shrank. He pivoted toward Zeke. "Old stories get messy in the light. Best not to mix them with community programs." Zeke dried his hands and looked at the man the way one looks at a stubborn bolt, gently at first, then with the right tool. "You have my address," he said. "Send what you like. I will have someone read it who does not bill by the hour to misunderstand simple things." The lawyer's mouth pinched. He left with a hum that wished it were a growl. Darren whistled under his breath. "Looks like the past reads Facebook." "Good," Zeke said. "Maybe it will learn something." They laughed, and the tension vented like steam from a cap loosened at the right moment. As the crowd thinned, a young girl lingered by the notebook on the shelf. She traced the hand-drawn cam map with one fingertip, careful not to smudge. "Did you really write all this?" she asked. "I really did," Zeke said. "Will you teach me to write one?" she asked. "I really will." "Nasraito." He tore a blank page from the back, drew the first axis, and put the pen in her hand. Outside, the town returned to ordinary time. Inside, something that had been quiet for years found its volume. Not loud, just right. On the workbench, between a box of new micrometers and a tray of donuts with exactly 2 bites missing from each, Zeke's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number lit the screen. "Mr. Lawson, this is Victor. Memphis conference in 2 weeks. They want to talk titled Legacy Efficiency and the People We Overlook. I told them you would consider it. No pressure. The door's open." Zeke looked toward the bay door where sunlight drew a bright rectangle on the floor. He thought of a boy named Caleb he had not met yet, of a town that had made room for a Saturday, of a past that might show up with a lawyer and leave with an empty briefcase. He typed back, "I will speak. I am bringing a bench, a micrometer, and 3 students." "Done," Victor replied. "Bring Nora too." Zeke smiled at nothing in particular and at everything at once. He closed the notebook gently, the way you do when you are not finished, only pausing to pick up a better tool. The Memphis Convention Center hummed with 1,000 conversations that all sounded like ambition. Banners promised cleaner power and smarter design. Suits and coveralls shared the same escalators. In the middle hall, a modest placard read, "Legacy Efficiency and the People We Overlook." Beneath it was a simple stage, a wooden workbench, a vise, a micrometer in a velvet box, and 3 folding stools. Zeke arrived with Nora, Jenna, and a trio of students from the Saturday class. There was the veteran who had asked about stolen work. There was the girl in the denim jacket who hated math unless it smelled like gas. There was a quiet kid named Theo who had built a go-kart from a wheelbarrow and stubbornness. Victor met them at the door with passes and a grin that looked like relief. "You brought the bench," Victor said. "I teach better with wood under my hands," Zeke replied. The room filled in waves. Graduate students squeezed forward with notebooks. Journalists hovered at the back like polite hawks. A few engineers in expensive ties sat with arms crossed, faces preloaded with opinions. Off to the side stood three men in tidy suits. Their badges read Anders Mechanical. One of them was the general counsel who had visited the shop. He stood with a careful smile that meant nothing good. The moderator offered an introduction that was short and correct. Ezekiel Lawson, longtime engineer and current mentor at Whitfield and Sons Auto, here to talk about efficiency and attention. Polite applause. Zeke stepped to the podium, glanced at it, and moved to the bench instead. He placed both hands on the wood and looked at the audience like they were in his bay on a Tuesday. "Engines are honest," he said. "People are complicated. We will talk about both." He pointed to the micrometer and opened the box. "Most of what we call genius is patience that learned where to stand. This tool forces you to stand in the only place where truth fits. Not almost, not close, exact." He lifted the mic and showed the slow turn of the thimble. He had Jenna read a number out loud. He had Theo feel the moment contact became measurement. He had the veteran hold the reference standard and call time like a crew chief. The room leaned forward. Phones stayed down. The workbench turned a conference talk into a garage lesson that refused to apologize for being practical. "Legacy efficiency," Zeke said, "is doing work that lasts longer than your credit. It is fixing one thing so well that a dozen other problems lose their excuse to exist. It is also admitting who built it. If you forget that last part, you did not build efficiency. You built a theft that runs smoothly." A ripple moved through the room. Eyes slid toward the men in suits. The general counsel did not blink. Zeke told the story, not with anger, with clarity. He spoke about the paper that had lost his name. He described the conference room where drawings were present and the author was not. He spoke about moving to a small town where a door code and a mop had felt like dignity because they were honest. He did not say the word revenge. He did not have to. Then he turned a dial and brought sound into the lesson. A speaker played a recording he and Jenna had made in the shop. It was the Rolls-Royce at idle with the tick barely there. Then the same engine after the repair. A whole note. He let the room hear the difference between right and almost. He let the silence after the second recording explain the rest. The applause arrived early, small but sincere. Zeke raised a palm for quiet and nodded toward the students. "I promised I would not speak alone," he said. "Legacy does not work that way." The girl in denim stepped to the mic with knees that wobbled and a voice that did not. She described drawing her first cam map with a pen that Zeke had put in her hand. Theo held up a simple bracket he had machined that week and explained why a curve solved a problem a rectangle could not. The veteran spoke slowly about dignity in work and the way teaching can put a name back on a life, even if a patent never does. By the time Zeke returned to the bench, the room had softened. Skepticism had not vanished. It had simply been forced to share space with respect. The general counsel from Anders raised a hand. The moderator hesitated, then nodded. The man stood with his smile and his careful voice. "Anders Mechanical appreciates Mr. Lawson's renewed enthusiasm," he began. "We are also custodians of a significant body of intellectual property that over the years has involved many contributors. Memory is a flexible instrument. So is legend. It would be unfortunate to conflate community programming with claims that are difficult to verify after so much time." It was an elegant way to say three words: sit back down. Victor shifted in his chair, ready to rise. Nora touched his sleeve and shook her head once. Zeke did not move to the podium. He stayed at the bench. He opened his leather notebook and turned to a page with yellowed tape. He held it up to the camera that fed the projector. The room screens filled with a hand-drawn housing, annotations in tidy script, a date, and a line of initials that matched the name on the placard. E. Lawson. "Time is not the enemy of proof," Zeke said. "Paper remembers." He set the notebook down and pulled a folder from beneath the bench. "But if you prefer a different kind of memory, here are scanned emails and early drafts. A colleague kept them when I no longer could. Her name is Patricia Reynolds. She sent them last week when she learned we would be here. They contain version histories with author tags. They contain corrections in my hand. They also contain a meeting summary where a nephew's name appears beside a checkbox no one remembers checking. The general counsel's smile lost a degree of temperature. He started to speak. The moderator lifted a hand. "We can discuss documents after the session," she said. "Questions about the talk only, please." A young engineer on the aisle stood. "How do we make sure we do not become the kind of shop that erases the person who does the work?" Zeke nodded as if he had been waiting for that one question. "You publish your process, not just your result. You make authorship a habit, not a letterhead. You put names on drawings before they are valuable, not after. And you teach. When you teach, theft has less room to hide." Another hand rose. "What do you do with anger that took years to grow?" "You lift with it," Zeke said. "You do not swing it. Anger can carry, but it cannot aim." The rest of the session moved like a careful build. Questions, answers, small demonstrations. When it ended, the applause did not feel like a performance. It felt like a promise. People stood, a few wiped their eyes. Students lined up to touch the micrometer and the bench as if contact could make knowledge stick faster. Near the exit, Aaron stood with Caleb and Samantha. They had slipped in on the far side 10 minutes after it started. When Zeke saw them, he forgot that rooms could hold other people. He crossed the floor in a straight line and stopped one step short the way a person stops at an altar. Aaron put a hand on his father's shoulder. Caleb lifted a small spiral notebook and blurted, "Grandpa, I wrote down the part where you said engines are honest. Can we make one honest at home?" Zeke laughed, and the laugh shook loose air he had not used in years. "We can," he said. "We will." Victor joined them with a paper in his hand. It was a draft agreement. It outlined a consultancy that paid to say no. It funded the Saturday program for 2 years. It pledged credit, authorship, and discretion. At the bottom was a line for a signature that was finally his again. Nora read it over one shoulder like a cautious aunt. She nodded once. "The shop can spare you for travel," she said. "Bring back what you learn. Leave the micrometers with us." They were heading for the door when the general counsel appeared again. Not blocking, only hovering. "Mr. Lawson," he said, "we will be in touch." "You will," Zeke said. "So will we." Outside, the sun lit the concrete like a clean sheet of paper. Cameras flashed, not from the press, from students who wanted to remember where they were standing when a story turned. Zeke gathered the bench with Theo, tucked the micrometer back into velvet with Jenna, and handed the leather notebook to the girl in denim. "You carry it," he told her. "Bring it back on Saturday with a new page inside." "What should I draw?" she asked. "Something no one can take your name off," he said. That night back in Briar Creek, the bay door rolled open to cool air and the smell of rain somewhere far away. Aaron and Caleb stood at the workbench, while Zeke cleared a space between the vise and a stack of donuts. He slid a small engine mock-up across the wood. Caleb put both hands on it like a promise. The town around them kept its slow rhythm. Inside, a legacy that had been misfiled for years found its rightful drawer. Not in a museum, in a place where hands remember faster than walls. Jenna locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. The letters glowed for a second and then went dark. The engine in the mock-up ticked once, the good kind of tick, the sound a machine makes when it cools down after doing exactly what it was made to do. If you stayed to the end, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Then come back on Saturday. We saved you a stool.